Let's be honest, we have all done foolish things for a chance to get it on. What's the weirdest thing you've done to get laid? Welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. I walked from Arlington to Dallas to lose my virginity. I reached her house after 16 hours of walking. I didn't have money for a taxi but had the money to buy rubber and a gym membership so I could wash myself before heading to her house. I got there at like 4 a.m. Got to her house at 4:30 a.m. It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for her, and we did it in her room. I was tired from walking for 16 hours just to get laid. She was tired from worrying about me all day. So we slept till noon the next day. When we woke up, her mom said, "Go get him," 'cause she looked in the room to see us cuddling in bed. She didn't give us a speech. I overheard her talking to my mom over the phone saying, "If this boy walked 16 hours to F my daughter, there's nothing either of us could have done," and we both just laughed so hard. We spent the day together, then her mom drove me home. She gave me a speech on the way home. But my mom didn't just hold back to a speech. My God, the difference between black and white parenting is wild. Story 2. I was chased by a woman 25 years younger than me that lived really close. I kept saying no, she kept saying she's an adult and she likes DILFs. She seemed mature. She was a similar age to my adult kids, which was a bit weird. She pointed out that she wasn't a kid, she was 1/4 of a century old. And being around my kid's age is meaningless as I wasn't her dad. I got her point. I was a teen dad, so I'm not that old to be fair. We hooked up for 18 months. Never really talked much though. She'd just send a photo and asked if I could stop by. One night she felt playful and told me that she originally wanted to hook up with me because she'd had a crush on my eldest son in high school. He was married and she'd never get a chance with him. She said that I'm just as hot he is, and I was as close as she'd get to knowing what doing him was like. It really effed with my head on so many levels. Then she told me she'd been in my house as a kid, and we'd made a picnic barbecue for them. And I suddenly remember my son coming home at 14 with a dozen friends, including 2 annoying show-off girls. They'd walked through the house and straight out the back. Their mother and I threw some food together and I cooked a barbecue to feed them. Then we left them be. I wish I didn't have a vague memory of those 2 girls. I don't know which one she was, but it makes it all even more gross. At least her being an adult was okay in my head, even though her intentions were messed up. I could put that straight in my head. Story 3. I can tell you the weirdest way I got laid. This was the military dorm in England, late 90s. I'm just playing StarCraft, minding my own business, when there's a knock on my door. I open it and there's the girlfriend of a guy who lives downstairs. She say, "I really want to get laid but my friend is here with me. Can she stay with you tonight?" Naturally I said yeah. She turns and goes to the end of the hall and waves her friend around the corner. I'd met her in passing once in the dorms but never spoke to her. She does a fast intro and pushes her into my room. We're both standing there kind of awkwardly as her friend leaves to go get laid. She turns back and says, "Oh, she really likes her bum smacked too." We look at each other and laugh, then close the door. It gets crazier because I become the de facto friend drop-off zone for the dorm. A sort of on-call wingman for my boys. I didn't have to do shit, and over the span of a year they brought me 3 more women. Story 4. I met this woman on a dating site in 2013. She lived several hours away and I didn't have a car at the time. She was the type of hot that made you feel awkward just to make eye contact with her. She wanted me to come stay with her during a 3-day weekend. I took a bus to a train. I think it took me 4.5 hours in total. I was under the impression I'd be staying with her. That was not the case. We met in a public place, which makes sense because we met online. She lived in a decent-sized city. We went out around the public areas and ran into some people she knew. Things were okay but a bit weird. Some of the random encounters felt a bit staged. I somewhat had a "is she going to steal my kidney" feeling. We went to dinner and had a few drinks. I paid for everything. She gets a bit tipsy and I figured it was going to be a fun night. We walk back to where I believe her apartment to be, and it's essentially a hostel/cheap motel. She tells me this is where I will be staying the night. Then she grabs a cab and goes home. I splurged on the best setup I could get for safety reasons. I had been texting some friends updates and made it known I was in touch with buddies. The next day she asks to meet me at the breakfast place. She doesn't try to pay or anything. I ask her what the plans were. She had this entire day all planned out. Yeah, she wanted me to pay. I told her that I had a friend in the area to meet first. I did, but they didn't know I was in town. I later messaged her that plans had changed and I was meeting with some friends. She blew up my phone but I never answered. A few weeks go by and she still keeps trying to reach out to me. A friend reached out and asked if I was seeing this woman. I gave him the story. He messages his friend. His friend actually knows her and she, friend's friend, texts him the short version. She's known in their city for doing this. She was from a rich family, and they lost it all when her dad left for a younger woman. She'd attract guys she thought she could get money out of. She'd string them along and not put out because she wanted to keep herself clean for marriage. Story 5. The daughter of the mayor of our city was insanely good-looking. She and I were good friends in high school, but I always felt she was way out of my league, so I never even attempted to even ask her out. She disappeared after high school and resurfaced about 5 years later when we crossed paths in a local supermarket parking lot where we talked for hours standing outside our cars. She acted very interested in my conversation, and she asked me if I would like to come to her house for dinner later that week. I eagerly agreed. The sexual tension I felt was pretty high. I really thought I was going to finally get lucky with this attractive woman at long last. The day arrived and I went over to her house for dinner. She fixed a really nice meal. Afterwards we went into her living room where she had a dry erase board on a stand in the living room facing where we were sitting. After a minute or two she stood up and started her Amway sales pitch. She lured me to her house to try to convince me to join Amway. I thanked her for dinner and told her that I wasn't interested. I left confused and with blue balls. Story 6. Girl I like was sad about her friend who was also single. The friend couldn't get a date to save her life. She wasn't ugly or anything, just had no personality and was kinda gloomy. I told the girl I wanted to bang, that I'd take the friend out and show her a good time, if the girl I wanted agreed to let me do the same after. She agreed to it. The friend was actually really fun. We went ziplining to a fair thing and capped the day off at the dog park with my pup, who didn't hate her, which was shocking. She got to pet so many dogs, she was thrilled. We didn't do it, but I would've, had she given me any signal. She was that fun. I went out with the girl I wanted to go out with a few days later. Made a plan for a few fun activities. When I went to her house to pick her up, she pulled me in, and we banged right away. Didn't do any of the other stuff. I regret not doing the friend. Or hell, dating her. The girl I wanted was not as fun in bed as I'd imagined she'd be. Story 7. Was casually dating a girl from my town, I'll call her local, and went on a ski trip with the guys and met another girl. She and a friend came up for a weekend of fun with my roommate and myself a couple weeks later. They lived about a 7-hour drive away. A couple weeks after that local girl wanted me to come with her to a big sale in a town 3 hours away on Saturday. I agreed, but then the out-of-town girl called me and wanted to meet me halfway and spend the night at a motel. This was before we had cell phones, by the way. The town we were to meet at was about an hour from where I had promised local girl to go with her for the big sale. I didn't want either to know about the other, so I drove with local girl to the sale, 6-hour drive round trip, then as soon as I got home turned around to meet out-of-town girl, another 4-hour drive. It was nearing midnight before I got to where she was staying, and I knew which hotel but not the room number. No cell phone, so I couldn't phone her, and the office was closed with only an emergency phone number as they were booked full. So I went around room to room quietly knocking on room doors and whispering her name until I found the room she was in. And no, I would not do that again. Story 8. Took a bus to another city to spend time with someone who was 15 to 20 years older than me. We decided to take a walk in the dense forest-like park where after some time of walking I kissed her. We kept kissing deeply after every few steps. After some time it was difficult to resist for both of us. Remember, there were people passing around every now and then. After some time we decided it was getting dark, so we should leave back to the city center, from where I could look for transport back to my city. I missed my last bus to return home, so she asked me to stay over. She had her daughter at home, which was a bit awkward since her daughter was only a few years younger than me. They lived in single-bedroom apartment. The bedroom was occupied by the daughter, and I crashed on the sofa bed in the living room, where we spent time watching some random movie waiting for her daughter to sleep. After her daughter went to sleep, she gave me an amazing head in the kitchen, since that was the farthest from the bedroom. We couldn't do it that night due to her daughter, but we decided to meet next time at my place. But that never happened. Story 9. I was set up with a girl who had a terminal illness. She was the best friend of a classmate whom I had known since the 2nd grade. So, most of my childhood. The classmate had a minor crush on me, and her friend was, because of her illness, homeschooled. Basically a dropout, because what was the point? The girl never had a chance to meet a boy. And my classmate thought I was a good fit. I befriended the girl, and although it was never spoken aloud, this girl wanted to do it before she died. It felt odd at the time, and I was pretty immature, but I went along with it. It became apparent pretty quickly that I lacked emotional maturity. I found her very attractive, and I actually thought she was very sweet, but I couldn't deal with it. I remained her good friend. She got laid. Hated it. One day we ended up having a fling one weekend. Very random with a lot less pressure. It seemed to be a reciprocal success, and she died a year later. Side quest. My next sexual partner was a 29-year-old who taught me a lot. In a month's time, I was a 2000% better lover, and the weirdest regret in my life was not being a better lover to the younger girl. Story 10. When I was 20, my parents and younger brother had gone away for the weekend, so I invited my girlfriend over to our house for a night of passion. I had this great idea of dragging a mattress onto the roof so we could make love under the stars. I dragged the mattress through a second-floor window and up a sloping section of the roof. The roof was corrugated metal with bolts sticking out in the corrugations every meter or so. As I finally got the mattress on the top of the roof, I started slipping down the sloping roof in bare feet. I slipped about 6 or 7 meters and stopped at the gutter on the first floor, but I had also slipped over the bolts which had ripped open the soles of my feet, and blood was pissing out of my feet all over the roof. My girlfriend, who was watching me, saw the blood and went and got a few towels, and I wrapped up my feet. I then climbed off the roof, and she drove me to the closest hospital to have my feet sewn up. Having anesthetic injections into the soles of my feet remains the most painful experience of my life. We went home with my feet sewn and wrapped up and still did it. I told my mum what happened the next day, as the mattress was still on the roof and the blood was still there. We never spoke of it again. I'm 48 now and haven't thought about that for a long time. Story 11. There was a girl living in the other side of the city. I can't remember how we met, and I went to her place every weekend for 6 months, even though she gave me zero indication of liking me. She had a weird personality but had a nice body. One of those weekends she told me she liked bad boys, and I tried to act the part, but didn't work out to make her interested in me. Then I got tired of chasing her, ghosted her, focusing my energy on other things. A friend of hers called me, told me to go to her place, her friends, for a chat. When I arrived, the girl I liked waited in her bedroom, wrapped in a towel, apparently. Ignoring her was the turn-on she needed. My brain signed off and we started kissing and what not, whilst her friend was watching. After we did the deed, she asked me if I had money because she wanted to get high and her boyfriend wouldn't come back until later the afternoon with whatever she wanted to get high with. I looked around their room, and that's when I realized both these girls were junkies. The weird personality traits and everything else it didn't fit in the picture made sense in that post-nut clarity. I bolted out of the place as soon as I could and never looked back. Story 12. Flew across the country. Became single unexpectedly. After about 6 months I was not ready to date yet, but I was super horny. Years prior, I had a coworker who aggressively hit on me after a work party. Even though I wasn't single, I gently rebuffed her attempt. She also moved across the country after leaving my company. I DM'd her social media with some flirty comment. She responded in kind. I told her I'd be in her city in a couple of months and asked could I come over and see you? She said yes. So I booked a trip to that city, went to her place. After 1.5 hours of awkward small talk, I said, "Can I kiss you?" And she said yes. One thing led to another, and post-nut clarity confirmed for me that I was not ready to be with someone. 2 more bouts of post-nut clarity that day really sent home the message. Story 13. I didn't do it on purpose, but here is the story. I was flying out of Ciudad Juarez Airport to Mexico City. Earlier in the day, there was a commercial airliner that crashed on takeoff in Durango, Mexico earlier that day. The lady that was in the middle seat next to me, I was in the aisle, hadn't flown before and was freaking out over that and the crash having taken place. When we started to taxi for takeoff, every single bump she started to freak out. All the flight attendants came to the aisle by me and tried to calm the lady down. We couldn't take off until the lady was either calmed down or removed from the flight. I finally pull out my headphones, talk to the lady, had her put the headphones on, listen to the calming music, Lord and Enigma, and take deep breath. She calmed down, the FAs were able to get in their seats, and we took off. Throughout the flight, whenever we hit turbulence, the lady would freak out. I calmed her down, held her hand, got her to do the breathing, etc. Once we landed in Mexico City, we deplaned and put on a bus to go to the terminal. Women walked up to me on the bus, and after we were let off at the terminal offering me their numbers and or to have a drink with them. Too bad I was married then. If I wasn't, I could have made out like a bandit. Story 14. Had to think about this one. I've done a lot of crazy/weird things to get laid over the years. But going to have to reach back 30 years for this one. Was dating but not exclusive with a young lady. She was really into the romanticized image of knights and damsels in distress, and I was into medieval reenactments. Met at a function/event I was working. Long story short, she was in college, and I was friends with her history professor, and knew a couple guys on campus security, so got everything cleared ahead of time. enlisted the aid of 3 buddies dressed as men-at-arms and while wearing full armor kit rode onto campus, burst into the classroom declaring, "There she is," which embarrassed her, causing her to shrink into her chair, then picked her up, throwing her over my shoulder while one of my buddies grabbed her books. Back outside I remounted my steed, had my buddies pass her up to me and rode away with her deep into the forest near campus to about a mile away where I had a picnic lunch prepared in a clearing. We dated exclusively for about 2 months before figuring out we were just not a good match. Still fun and crazy. I've also rappelled down the side of a building to deliver flowers and ask a lady out, jousted on motorcycles and played 8-person strip poker with the winner designating pairs that were not guaranteed to be guy/gal. Not my brightest moment, but it worked out well. Story 15. Went on holiday to Faro. On week 1 there was a festival called Afro Nation, and on week 2 there was a festival called Rolling Loud. So I went to a party between week 1 and 2, so there were people from both festivals. I was enjoying my night and then I noticed this girl staring at me. I was like, she must have been looking around, so I looked at her and it happened again. After 5 minutes, she came and sat down beside me with some other girls and I caught the hint. My friend was talking about being a playboy before the trip, so I told him, let's make a bet. If I get this girl's Instagram/number, the taxi back to the Airbnb is on you. Once we locked the bet, I turned my chair to her and we spoke, exchanged details, and I told her, how about tomorrow we meet downtown for lunch? She said that since she was in Faro for Afro Nation, she would be leaving in the morning after the party, so we went our separate ways. I arrived at the Airbnb at 9 a.m. and slept till 5 p.m. Woke up to messages and missed calls from her saying, I've decided to not get on the plane, now I don't have a place to stay. And at the same time I got a message from a guy saying he was selling a ticket for the concert since his friend couldn't go. I told her and the guy to meet me near the bracelet stand. I got out the house so effing fast. Bought the ticket for €80 and went to her, gave her the bracelet and we went to the festival, went back to the Airbnb, and we had banged a few times. She then bought another flight home, France, and literally the same week she had another festival in Mallorca. She said her friend couldn't come so she could give the ticket to me. I read the message, stopped everything I was doing, and made my way to the airport. I didn't even think of what I was doing or where I was going. Best choice I made. Festival was amazing, we banged like rabbits, went skinny dipping at 4 a.m. and realized there was a drunk guy watching us, lol. We dated for 9 months after that. Best summer I ever had. Every time I remember that I bought a random girl a bracelet for a festival full of horny men, I remind myself that I just got lucky and to never do that again. Story 16. My arrogant former friend started seeing this really cute girl from Tinder. One day he invited me to hang out with them as a fifth wheel and I did. The first time meeting her, 5 feet 7 inches blonde, very fit, nice smile and Christian, I could tell that her and him, Asian 5 feet 4 inches cocky, had awful chemistry. However, I did notice that she was very much into me. We ended up all getting sloppy drunk and she made the excuse that she needed to shower and work early, so we left. About 10 minutes later, in his car smoking AJ, he was bragging that ugly me could never get a girl that fine. Cross-faded me, already knowing that she was eyeing me all night, knew what was up and goaded Mr. Arrogant into making a bet. He bet his dad's BMW that if I was to go upstairs and knock on the door, say he left, she would slam the door in my face and call him. I bet $500 that I would not only be invited in, but I would sleep with her. We shook and off I went. Sure enough, she answered the door in a towel and was still very wet from the shower. She invited me in and we did it. I didn't get the BMW and really didn't want the girl, but that's probably the weirdest way I've ever been laid, 'cause never in my life would I have knocked if he hadn't bet me. As an added aside, after that we remained friends for a while. However, that only lasted so long, as he got into the habit of trying to embarrass and belittle me around people, especially women, which almost always ended up backfiring, until I just stopped kicking it with him. Edited to add, she didn't actually have work the next day, she just didn't want him to stay. Story 17. I practically became her therapist. She had several struggles because of her boyfriend mentally abusing her. I started to tell her work out coping mechanics, crafted with her, talked, and basically forgot what I was trying to do at the beginning. Weeks go by helping her cope, doing therapeutic stuff together, until one night she mentioned that she really missed physical intimacy and wanted to with me so bad. She asked me if I brought protection. Guess what? After weeks being a therapist, I obviously didn't prepare for that. We ended up making out and I got attached. Well, we lost connection because she wasn't ready for attachment. I heard of her last month, and she ended up dating a guy that looks like me. Plus she was the most gorgeous girl I ever met. Story 18. In my first college semester, I was finally using the early internet to find a guy to date, so I had an arrangement to meet him at a motel room late in the day for an exchange. Look, it was 2001 and flying in the face of the generally accepted wisdom of not giving personal details to internet strangers. That day, interestingly, a handful of friends of a dorm buddies came up to visit him for his birthday. Among them was Heidi, a cute girl who became the center of attention. I genuinely don't remember why, but we all wound up in my dorm room, surrounding her on my bed and talking while I was in my computer chair nearby. Somehow it came up that she'd love to see two dudes get it on, and the other guys, all manly dudes strictly into ladies, admitted they'd never. I waited till people were heading out to go do birthday stuff for my friend, and I told her what my evening had in store. She absolutely ditched the birthday events to come with me to the motel room to watch me, and then we went back to the dorm and we hooked up too. Then I drove her 3 hours back to her home and 3 hours back to the dorm, starting at midnight. Absolutely the most dangerous driving I've ever done. I even pulled into a rest stop to take about a 30-minute nap. Story 19. I went to a nightclub with some friends in Europe, where I met a girl early on that night which was also out with some friends. The only issue was that they had to catch a plane early next morning back to their country. After some time of being with her, I asked her to leave the club with me, but she refused because she had to go back to her hotel to pack the bags early on the morning. By the time her friends wanted to leave, we had been dancing and kissing for quite some time. So I went outside the club with them. I knew time was against me and I was running out of options. Also, after all the kissing and stuff, I was thinking with my second brain, so I'm not sure what went through my head. Her friends had already called a cab, so I had to throw a Hail Mary. I saw a guy selling flowers and I didn't even think. I went straight to him and bought all of the flowers he had, went back to the girl and her friends, got down on one knee and gave them to her as if I was asking her to marry me with a huge bouquet of roses. It was at this moment that her friends decided I was going to get laid. They told me to get in the cab with them, invited me back to their hotel room, cleared the room, even kicked out a friend that was sleeping, and in a glorious moment, let me enjoy the alone time with their friend in their room as they all waited outside. Story 20. Broke into a friend's house, and it had windows with metal bars. It was super hard and I had never done anything like it before. Story goes like this. I was a teenager as horny as any other and I was dating this cute girl when we decided it was the right time to take things a step up in our relationship, but we had nowhere to do it. We had this friend who was going away for the weekend with his family and he told us it was okay for us to do it in his house during the weekend. Then when the day came, he left with his family and texted me saying our way to his house was free. He told me where he hid his reserve key. Me and the girl were horny AF and so we met there barely holding ourselves and went for the key, and guess what? No key. I texted him, bro, no keys here. Where is it? And he replied, stupid brother lost his, and took it without telling me. Of course the hormone train couldn't be stopped at that point anymore, so we decided it was going to happen, key or no key. Then we started to prospect every door and window in the house to see what we could do. Ended up on one high bathroom window, and its metal bars had enough space for us to try to get inside. She boosted me up and I hung off the bars, and as soon as I pushed my shoulders to fit the bar I realized it was going to fit, but it was also going to hurt a lot and the landing would be a mess, so I squeezed myself through the window bars and landed in the shower cabin floor, hurting my back and my knee. I then limped to their kitchen, got hold of another set of keys and opened the back door for the girl to come in. Story 21. Told a girl I liked the band Idlewild. It would be a funnier or more questionable story if I lied about it, but they were actually my favorite band growing up. Basically, I had swapped numbers with a girl in a pub one night and had ended up back at the same bar later, and were chatting. Her friend asked me if I had heard of Roddy Womble, the singer, because if I told the girl I had then I would be in there. I said yeah, I effing love Idlewild, and she was excitedly telling her friend this. It was like a switch went off. She went from being mildly interested to, take me back to your place now because we're going to hook up. I can't stress enough how much this girl's interest increased because of musical taste. Not gonna say I wasn't into it because it was quite freaky and I liked that. The knowledge that I probably only got laid because I listened to a specific band growing up was pretty funny to say the least. Story 22. I'm female. At about 23, I was going through some stuff and really liked spending time at the house of the guy I was sleeping with. We weren't dating, he didn't have feelings for me, but I liked going over and waking up there. I was living with my parents after a breakup, and I hated being home. One time I went over and there was another girl there that he was obviously into. My heart was so set on staying there that night. I simply didn't leave and dong blocked the situation with the guy and girl. At about 4 a.m., she was basically like, okay, you win, and went home. I got my wish of sleeping with the guy and staying there that night, but it felt yucky. That's the last time it happened. Story 23. My buddy was having a destination wedding in Vegas, and I was the best man. There was one girl that was clearly throwing it out there, and about 7 guys following her around like puppy dogs. I was kinda one of them, but trying to figure out how to stand out. She stepped into a lingerie store and decided to tease us with changing into a lacy set and invited all of the guys into her dressing room. And I just said F it and walked out. I didn't hang around in the room for the sausage fest that lasted a whole 30 seconds. Nothing happened except the guys got a good look while I was waiting outside. Anyways, a few drinks later, and we were all back at the Luxor, and the 8 of us were all in her room just chatting. She said she was going to get ice and walked out of the room, and guys began to argue over who she was most interested in. I immediately walked out of the room and down the hall. I spun her around, pinned her against the wall, and we made out for a solid 60 seconds. She said, "Wow. I thought you weren't interested." I said, "You thought wrong. I'm not one to compete against 6 other guys for your attention. I'll see you back in the room." I immediately walked back to the room and told all of the losers to leave. They proceeded to argue who she liked more, and I said, "You all better go, or you're going to watch us bang for the next 3 hours. It's up to you." They all were saying, "Are you effing serious? What do you think we've been doing for the last 2 minutes? Now get the F out." They all left and we hooked up all night. I don't even think I caught her name. The next morning, my buddy was pissed cause I never responded to any of his phone calls or messages on his wedding night reception. The marriage only lasted 2.5 years, oh well. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.